Have you ever heard of a place so quiet you could hear its secrets? In the fog-covered hills of County Donegal, Ireland, lies a small body of water locals call Lough Eara, the Lake of Whispers. For generations, a chilling warning has been passed down. Never, ever swim in it after dark. They say anyone who does never resurfaces the same. Our story begins in the quiet Irish countryside, where this lake sits hidden away. It's barely a mile wide, but its reputation isn't built on size. It's built on a sound. On calm nights when the wind dies and the water turns as still as glass, people say you can hear breathing from beneath the surface. Not the sound of fish or bubbles rising, but slow, steady, human breathing. In the summer of 1994, a team of 4 professional divers came from Dublin. They were there for a magazine feature on Ireland's underwater ruins, and they'd heard the strange tales about Lough Eara. One of them, an experienced diver named Daniel Byrne, was a notorious skeptic. He laughed off the local warnings, calling them fairy tales for tourists. He was about to find out how wrong he was. On the morning of June 12th, they geared up for their first descent. The water was bone-chillingly cold, and visibility was almost zero beyond a couple of meters. As they sank into the darkness, they found what they were looking for: thick layers of peat, twisted tree roots, and the ghostly fragments of stone walls. It was the remains of an old village, drowned centuries ago when the valley was flooded to create a reservoir. For the first 10 minutes, everything was routine. Then, Daniel heard it crackle through his comms headset. A faint whisper. At first, he dismissed it as radio interference. But the sound, it was too human. A woman's voice, soft and melodic, humming what sounded like an old lullaby. His dive partner, Sean, heard it too. But when they surfaced and asked the other 2 divers, they looked at them blankly. Their radios had been silent. No static, no voices. Only Daniel and Sean had heard the song from the deep. That night, back at their rented cottage, Daniel couldn't sleep. He told the others that the mysterious tune was stuck in his head, replaying over and over. It was a melody he'd never heard before, yet it felt strangely familiar. He grabbed a piece of paper and wrote the notes down, saying, "It feels like she's still down there, waiting." On the second dive, Daniel insisted on going down alone. He was determined to find a rational explanation for the voice, maybe a strange echo chamber among the ruins, or air pockets trapped in the ancient stone. But 20 minutes into the dive, his camera feed on the surface began to flicker and distort. Through the static, his teammates saw something that made their blood run cold. A shape was moving in the murky water behind him. It was pale and eerily human-like. Long, dark hair floated in the current, and its eyes were wide open, watching him. The figure's mouth moved, as if it were speaking his name. Daniel froze, his own breath catching in his throat. Then, in a trembling voice that barely carried over the comms, he whispered, "She's here. She knows my name." And then, the line went silent. A frantic rescue effort pulled him out 20 minutes later. He was unconscious, but alive. When he finally woke up in the hospital, he refused to speak a single word about what he saw down there. He quit diving that day, left Ireland within the week, and was never seen by his teammates again. The team, shaken, returned to Dublin and buried the project. None of their footage was ever released. But years later, Sean, his dive partner, shared a chilling detail from that day. When they reviewed Daniel's dive logs, they found something that didn't make any sense. Before his final descent, Daniel had scribbled a single word on his wrist slate. Eara, the name of the lake. What Daniel didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Eara isn't an Irish name at all. It's Old Norse, and it translates to the one who listens. Local folklore tells a heartbreaking story of a woman named Maeve Eara, who lived in the valley long before it was flooded. When the dam broke and the water rushed in, swallowing her village, she refused to leave. She was waiting for her husband to return from war. Legend says she was the last person to drown, her spirit forever bound to the water. They say she lingers beneath the lake, calling out to anyone who enters, hoping one day it will be. In 2007, a research crew brought sonar equipment to map the lakebed. Their scans revealed a hollow structure buried deep beneath the mud, shaped like a small stone chapel. Inside it, faint metallic readings suggested the presence of a bell. But when they sent divers down to investigate, their equipment started failing inexplicably. Radio signals jammed. Underwater cameras suddenly shut off. One diver surfaced in a panic, claiming he saw a light flickering from the chapel doorway, like a lantern moving through the water. He never dove again. The lake is now closed to the public, following a tragedy in 2019 when a university student drowned during an unauthorized night dive. His body was never recovered, but a week later, his phone was found washed up on the opposite shore. On its recording app was a single audio file, just 36 seconds long. It begins with the sound of rushing water. Then, a faint female whisper can be heard, saying, "Daniel, you came back." Forensic experts verified the recording. It was genuine, no edits, no splices. But here's where it gets even stranger. When the audio is amplified, a second voice can be heard faintly in the background. A man's voice, whispering what sounds like, "I'm here." Some believe it's proof that Lough Eara, after centuries of waiting, finally found the one she was looking for. Others think the lake is something else entirely, a threshold, where the world of the living and the world of the dead can briefly meet through sound. To this day, locals say that on quiet nights, you can still hear her humming that same haunting tune across the water. The same melody Daniel Byrne wrote down all those years ago. No one knows if it's a warning or a welcome. So if you ever find yourself near Lough Eara and the wind dies down and the lake turns still as a mirror, perhaps it's best not to lean too close to the water's edge, because sometimes when you listen for the lake listens back. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you don't miss our next dive into the unknown. Stay curious and stay safe.